Hello everyone. Today is the last lecture, week 16. The topic is from PAD, People Alliance for Democracy, to PDRC, the People's Democratic Reform under Constitutional Monarchy. It's a big major event for our class today. We can sum up the whole history from 1932 to 2017, okay? All right, so let's take a look at the chronology, the brief one, okay, from 1992 to 1997. We discussed last time about the Constitution 1997, okay. So you can see from Buddy May 1992, and then we have the elections, and then we have Constitution in 1997. Okay, so that we ended last time. The future of Thai politics and society looked good at that moment, but in fact, it was not. So what happened? Briefly, okay, there was the election in 2001, okay, and Thai Party won, become the majority party for the first time, okay, and Thaksin Shinawatra was the prime minister with populist policy. And then in 2005, there was a protest starting from small group of activists, mainly journalists, newspaper, under the Manager magazine and journals, called later they able to gather more cooperation with other civil society group, and then they formed the People's Alliance for Democracy, PAD, or Yellow Church, which that color that they chose to wear, okay, to commemorate the kings, and that ended up in 2006 coup by the Council for Democratic Reform, okay, General Sonthi Bunyaratkarin, okay, and then next there was another constitution in 2007, and then election, and the Palang Prachachon, which came from the Thai Party, won election, okay, and then set up the new government. But then they faced protests, from the Yellow Shirts again, okay. So then they lost their government. The Constitutional Court stripped them off, from the prime minister and dissolved the party. So led to the Democrat Party under Pisik, okay. So the Red Church came out to protest against a Pisik government and call for new election. End up in the suppression, the big violence against the Red Church in 2010, Rajapasong. Many people died, okay. But after that, Pisik dissolved the parliament and election came. And Pheu Thai, also Palang Prachachon, renamed as Pheu Thai. And Yingluck Shinawatra became prime minister, okay. And then 2013, the government, enacted the amnesty bill, which led to protests by a new group, but coming from the all kind of Democrat and the Yellow Shirt, called People's Democracy Reform Council, or under Constitutional Monarchy, okay. They protested against this amnesty bill, okay. The protest became violent too, okay. So finally, Yingluck resigned, but it's too late, okay. 2017, but they continue the violence, with the PDRC. So, but you made a coup in 2017, okay. So that's the. Now, let's take a look at the major players, because this part, about 10 years, okay, we see two people's movements, okay, the Yellow and Red Church. In the past, from 1940, 50, 60, It's only the parties and then the army. Okay, so small elite, okay, within the small group of elite, they fought, one against the other. But this time, the players expanded to cover a lot more people, bigger, okay, and they attracted, 100,000 people, to come to join the demonstration, okay. So this is a new, phenomena in Thai politics now, okay. And then there were two coups in 2006 and 2014, okay, military coups. And there were two constitutions, 2007 and 2017, okay, the last one. We're still using 2017. Debate how long, okay. And then we have two violent catches. 2010 lectures suppressed by opposite government, okay. 2016 in the PDRC, protest against the government, and both sides use all kinds of violent means, okay, attacking and intimidating, so resulting in a few death and injuries, okay. And during this time, we have 6 prime ministers. Mr. Somchai Wongsawat, Samak Suntharawe, these two from Palang Prachachon Party, Abhisit Pechachiwa Democrat, and then General Surayut from the coup, and then Prime Minister Yingluck from Pheu Thai, and the end, but it's still here, General Prayut from the army commander. Okay, so that's major players. To mix, have more people, but it's still the army, the commander is still the one who call the shot. Okay. Now I'm gonna discuss some new ideas that came out in the past 10 years or so. Okay, mainly from 1992 until 2017. The middle class play a major role. Okay, but they also, instead of pursue middle class ideology for democracy like in Western Europe or America, the Thai middle class went to reconciliation with the monarchy. Okay, so I gave you some ideas. Dr. Pawet Pasim, famous medical doctor, and social critic, he's a senior, that's the elder, restaurant avuso, okay, always give advice, okay, when the country was in crisis, So this is from 1992 crisis, he wrote in Siam Weekly, he said, the entry of businessmen into politics naturally made the government overly concerned with commerce and private businesses and hardly appreciate of the humanitarian, social, and environmental sides of the story. So basically, this is starting now to give the idea to the people, to the public, that if business people, came into politics, they usually, look for interest, self-interest, commercial and private interest, not social welfare or other interest for the people. Okay, so that's a little bit negative idea coming out. They're looking for what we call clean politicians. The middle classes saw election system as inefficient and illegitimate, for the electorate was in the main ignorant and irresponsible. People still uneducated, ignorant. So this is how middle class look at election. They started to perceive that a good government was not only popularly elected, but also must be clean and capable. Okay, so this is the very Thai politics. Okay, not simply good government, but have to be clean and able. Okay, for politicians to be clean and capable were more desirable than to be elected. Now, you can understand why the middle class and the upper class elite more and more against election. Okay, because of this idea that election will not produce good, capable politicians. Okay, because if you have ignorant, uneducated ชาวบ้าน villagers choose the politician, or they always choose the wrong person. Okay, because they've been bought votes. Okay, so that's why they say corrupted democracy was as bad, if not worse, than military authoritarianism. This was the comment by Dr. Anek Rotamatat. Then he was Thammasat professor. Now he was the Minister of Science, Technology, Innovative, okay, under this Suthep Palang Prachha Chat Thai party, yeah, from the PDRC. Okay. Okay, so now I want to emphasize this, that the idea that dictatorship, authoritarian can be a good person, can be a good system. This is the Thai middle class belief. The middle class also did not wholly reject authoritarianism, but kept wishing that there might be a good authoritarian leader instead. Such was the psychology of the Thai middle classes in the crisis of May 1992. And this idea, this belief still continue in the next crisis against the government. The middle class Thai wavering position towards liberal democracy was its decisive intellectual move towards reconciliation with the monarchy. So the factor that shift the idea of the middle class from liberal democracy, based on election, based on liberal ideology in Europe and America, because they believe in the monarchy, the power, the influence, and the goodness of the monarchy will help bring this authoritarian leader to be good. Okay, so the monarchy was instrumental in the restoration of democracy, and as an institution was not incompatible with the democratic system of government. Now, to put it in a plain, this idea actually is saying that the monarchy now, since the king, in 1992, calling for peace between the protester and Suchana government. So the king restore democracy back to the government, to the country. So the king can play the role of the final player in bring back democracy. So that's why, is amount to say that, the king, actually, can have the role in the Thai democratic system of government. Okay, so that's why, why, the monarchy become more involved in so-called, government, bit by bit, directly or not directly, one factor, was the belief of the middle class from 1992, down to the present, that want the monarchy to play more positive role in Thai politics, beside the army. Okay, now they want the monarchy too. Okay, so in the period from 1981 to 1991, many intellectuals, including journalists and academics, had gradually moved away from the radical and socialist-oriented ideology towards conservatism and Buddhist fundamentalist. Okay, so this meaning is that now many journalists and academics, the leading intellectuals of the country, gradually move away from radical ideas, socialism or politics of progressivism, now is not suitable for Thailand. So they prefer something called conservative idea based on Buddhist practice of politics. Looking back at Thai history, the Thai king always practiced the Buddhist Dhamma Raja. So if we have a good political leader and practice the righteousness Dhamma Raja, then we're going to have a good government. So this is totally different from 1970s and the belief of a new politics. Okay. So this is the sample. I'm giving you a little history. Before the crash is 1992. A group of prominent 42 public intellectuals, I mean, journalists, writers, authors, professors, lecturers, medical, practitioners, including Dr. Parvez Vasi and Thirayut Bunmi, the former, student leader from 1973, submit a petition, to the king, ask the king to resolve the confrontation. That moment, the protester Red Rai Jamlong Si Mueang, occupy Rajadamner, so we see that a lot of people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people gonna crash with the army, So imminent use of forces by the army, and government, gonna come soon. So the group of intellectuals, petition the king, to come out, to resolve. Okay, if the king says something, he gonna stop, these violence crashes. So interesting to note that the appeal letter, for the first time, justify the use of royal power in order to persuade the government to dissolve the parliament and call for a new general election. Okay. So basically, this petition, actually they should ask the government, because what they want is an agreement to dissolve the parliament. This is the government can do. The prime minister can dissolve the parliament, and then call for a new general election. But the problem is Sujinda, the army commander, did not want to dissolve. He did not want a new election. He just become prime minister for a week or month. Okay, so why, call a new election? So that's why, the group said, okay, let's go to ask the king to do the job. Okay. So next we know that political consequence of the May 1992 crisis was after the crashes, and then finally the king came out, called the two parties, come in, and then asked them to stop. Okay. But the end of that crisis, not the triumph of the middle class or democracy, but instead it reinstated the so-called royal hegemony of Dhamma Raja. Okay, so 1992 crisis, end up not making the idea of democracy, election or system of check and balance or constitutional, become more powerful, more efficient, No, it didn't make any of that in the mind of people. Instead, people believe that, that crisis, was resolved by the power of the king, because the king used Dhamma Raja. So that's why, political scientists call, that moment was the royal hegemony, of kingship. Hegemony means, the highest, persuasive power that no any ideas and system can compete with the loyalty. Okay? It was the supreme, a position dominating, people. Okay. So that's, I think 1992 was the highest, rise of, monarchy, involving in politics. Okay. So the struggle against the military authoritarianism was won not because of the democratic ideology, but because of the moral authority of the king. Okay, same thing, Okay. So May 1992 incident had changed the power structure of the monarchy from head of a ruling clique to become head of a ruling class. Okay, this is the idea of Dr. Somsak. Okay, that he said that 1992 actually make the monarchy now. It's not simply the head of a group, or power people, but actually it's the ruling class. Class is the relation wider network of people. Okay, so it's not a small group of elite, traditional or power elite, but become a class of many group of people joy with similar objectives. Okay, believe in the same thing, similar thing. Okay, so this time you have a wider people who support this government and the power to rule the government. Okay, under the guidance of the king. Okay, by that time the beliefs and sentiments of the Bangkok middle class had turned against elections and populism. Okay, this is important because you're gonna understand this later why things turn differently from other countries in terms of democracy because the belief of the middle class now almost total rejection of elections and populism. Okay, because populist policy made the government like Thaksin become authoritarian, become more dictator. Okay, use more power. Okay, without morality. Okay, and election meaningless. Okay, because every time we elected always Thaksin party won the elections. Okay, now we come to the next chapter of the history. Okay, so I term this one royal power and the coup of 2006. Okay, so this time it started with the protest by Sonthit Limthongkul. He was a media tycoon and owner of the Manager Group Media Corporation. Okay, to publish the Manager daily newspaper, Manager magazine monthly, and Manager weekly economic. Basically. So he is a big, by that time, the country, we call media tycoon, the giant of the media world. Okay, and he's gonna buy many newspaper in Hong Kong and including UPI news sources in America. Okay, Sonthit and his team of the manager get into trouble with Thaksin government because they have the program using MCOT Channel 9 produce the called Manager Weekly program. But the program increasingly criticized Thaksin government more and more. Finally, the government force or persuade or coerce whatever the MCOT owner of Channel 9 to stop this program. Okay, kick the Sonthit team out of this program. Okay, so Sonthit started his program outside the MCOT by the moving to Thammasat Auditorium to Lumpini Park, horses live. By that time there's no Facebook Live. So he live, at the auditorium wherever he can, people come hundred or thousand people come to his followers, because he is a good, journalist, he has the style, he has the point, criticism against the government. Okay, all right. So and then Sonti started, criticism of Thaksin by use one of Thaksin, state ceremony, conducted in the Grand Palace. Okay. And Thaksin appointment of the acting Buddhist Supreme Patriarch. Okay. So these two, objectives, were against the monarchy. The Grand Palace, Sonti criticized Thaksin that this is less majesty. Okay, because the Grand Palace, is not for commoner, to hold your activities, even though you were prime minister, this is reserved for the king. And so this is the problematic, no one, know exactly, what is right and wrong, to use the Grand Palace, for state ceremony, but it attracted people attention, to look at, because the idea is Sonti gonna blame Thaksin, that Thaksin, gradually, trying to compete with the king's power. Okay, and next, it Thaksin trying to become like appoint the supreme patriarch that reserved for the king role, to appoint the Buddhist supreme patriarch, Pasankharat. Okay, not the prime minister. Okay, so the tactic of Sonti is, using the sacred trinity of the Thai nation, that is nation, religion, and monarchy. Okay, and gonna attack Thaksin, that he was the one who undercut, this sacred, trinity. Okay, now we're gonna look. Sonti also, offer his new definition of the nation and monarchy. Okay, I call that this is the new idea of the nation. Okay, this is Sonti explained, and he used it in his public speaking, in his program. He always come up with this idea, Okay, so he said, a nation is consisted of two things only. Please remember, one is religion and another monarchy. It's not other thing. It's not 30 baht curing every illness. This is Thaksin policy. No, it's not that kind of thing. Whenever the religion is weakened, the monarchy is also weakened. Whenever the king is weakened, religion, this I think means Buddhism, is also weakened. We will not have nation and religion, no matter it's Buddhist, Christian, and Islam, which are the soul of our Thai society, our spiritual. Okay, so the idea is, if you look back, from people period 1950, when people use Thai nation as a nationalism, the idea of so at that time people simply said, the nation consists of the people, and people become the nation with government support, and bring progress and moving along, Okay, nothing. Yeah, at that time the monarchy and state or nation, also part of that, but not emphasis, not the most important factor. Okay, but for Sonti, he limited only two parts. Okay, that is monarchy and religion, to make the two, like compatible. Okay, they got to be one or the other. They have to no, to stay together, religion and monarchy. So this is interesting, I never heard this analysis before. Okay, right. Okay, so but easy, because the sound like it's very clear, that if there's no king, then there's no Buddhism. If no Buddhism, then there will be no king. Okay. So if Thaksin attacked, or criticizing or did something wrong with religion, that means he also made something wrong with the monarchy. If he did something wrong with the monarchy, that means he also did something wrong to Buddhism. Okay, so that's, I think, it's simple, in understanding. Okay. Now, on and on, Santi analysis, became more elaborate. Okay. So the monarchy is the last buffer of our society to which we can rely upon when the leader has no virtue. However, when the monarchy has become a rubber stamp in political affairs, the country then can be bought and sold because politicians who in turn were controlled by parties who made the constitution. The party was owned by capital or business. Okay. If the country were going to be privatized, like the privatization of the electricity generating authority of Thailand, EGAT, the petroleum authority of Thailand, PTT, then politicians can put their own people to sit in this and that organization. That will be the day that nothing is left for us, even our soul. Okay, so this whole idea is that Sonti tells us that politicians come in and they bought or sold the state, the government, the government enterprises like EGAT or PTT, okay, and that's in the end, even the soul Buddhism, or belief, will be gone, nothing left, okay. So now we have hang on, to religious, to other beliefs because the monarchy was the last buffer in this society. Okay, so that's the put the monarchy as an activism now. Okay, next. Okay, and then so he analyzes Thaksin in running the government and the country, ultimately, to separate the monarch from his own subjects. Okay, this is important. This is the so he said, the way Thaksin became powerful, finally, ultimately, in the end, he gonna separate the monarch from his own subjects. Now, remember, from Prince Thaniniwat to Mom Nachong Kugrit Pamod and conservative loyalists from the 60s, 50s, they introduced this idea that the monarchy and the peoples or the subjects are the same. They never been enemies. Okay. So this time, Sonti update, okay, his analysis by attack Thaksin that he was the one who gonna separate the peoples from the monarch. Okay, so it's so powerful. I mean, if you listen, you look at, if you believe that Thaksin is wrong, is immoral, because the charges against his corruption, selling stocks, become big news, then, this idea, this suggestion is very appealing. Okay. Now, in order to save the monarchy and nation, it was Sonti's mission to bring the people or subject back to the monarch. Okay. So his yellow shirts, his PAD movement, actually, was to bring the people back to the monarchy. So now you can see now the yellow shirt, very powerful at that time, draw 100,000 people every day to come to the protest, okay, occupy months in Bangkok's main streets, okay. So the strategy for Sonthi and PAD is called for public signatures in a petition to His Majesty the King via General Prem Tin Sulanon, who was president of the Privy Councillors at that time, and he was senior statesman, okay. So they're gonna put signatures of 100,000 people, and then brought that letter to Prem, okay, and then asked Prem to give it to the king. Okay, so this is not the first time that the protester want to give letter to the king. It started by PAD, and Sonthi was the one who initiated that idea to give the letter to the king. Okay. So, but the debate, on the topic of royal power, and its position vis-a-vis the elected government, that time many people, debated whether this strategy is correct or not, is practical or not, is the not bringing, the monarchy to play or involve in a real politics, because from the beginning, everyone believed that the monarchy should be above politics. That's the best to keep the monarchy, because politics is the struggle, is purely, competition, for interest, for power, So the monarchy should not involve in this, struggle. But now, the PAD, launched the new idea now that is the role, is the nature of the monarchy, that is good, is virtue, is moral. That's why the monarchy should be in politics. Okay. So this is the question that time when people ask, was it correct that the monarchy in the constitutional government simply a rubber stamp for the government and could not exercise any of its traditional authority and power? See, look the way that that group, but look at the power, the role of the monarchy, by everything have to countersign by the prime minister or the speaker of the house, president of the parliament. So they read that this is make the monarchy as a rubber stamp for the government. This is simply, the different understanding or reading of relation between the government and the monarchy, or what we call constitutional monarchy. Okay, so that's the problem, that if you think that the countersign by the government mean the monarchy is rubber stamp, then of course then you want the king to exercise more power. Okay, where is his power and how he gonna exercise? Okay, so the PAD, on 4th of February 2006, 100,000 people gathering in front of the Ananta Samakom throne hall at the Royal Plaza. Okay, so that signified that the majority people, already, decided that Thaksin is wrong. He abused his power in mismanagement of the country. So he lost his legitimacy. Okay, political legitimacy in democracy always come from election, or you lost your vote of confidence in the parliament. Okay, or you lost the constitution court or the administrative court, decide that prime minister is wrong, committed grave, error, then you have to decide. Then you lost legitimacy. But this time, the PAD said we have 100,000 people agree to sign this letter. So that means Thaksin government lost his legitimacy. So this is a new theory. Okay, because if you use this kind of method, then in America you have 100,000 people came out to protest against Joe Biden, and then whether Joe Biden lost his legitimacy now, even though he won, electoral college, but Republicans and Trump able to get 100,000 people protesting. Of course, democracy, the practitioner said no, we have to follow the constitution and electoral process. You cannot use demonstration, by people, to compete for legitimacy. Okay. So this is something again. The people at large are the owners of the sovereign power bestowed by the crown. So they have the absolute right to call for the return of this power, to hand it over to the king or to the crown, to exercise it in cooperation with the people. So his explanation is, if we have a lot of people, coming, and the people are the owners of sovereign power. Constitution said sovereign power belongs to the people or come from the people. Okay. So people give this sovereign power back to the king. Okay. And then ask the king to exercise it, in cooperation with the people. This is a very clever analysis. It sounds very, very logical. So now the people gave this sovereign power back to the king and asked the king, okay, we cooperate, the king and the people jointly, cooperate. Okay, that means use this sovereign power together against Thaksin government. So this is the new theory of what we call people sovereignty. Okay, now continue with the Sonti idea. Therefore, we could not simply justify democracy through elections and the elected government. Elections had never reflected the reality of Thai society. Okay. Likewise, we could not justly say that the elected government was a true representative of the people. So, return loyal power. Okay, so this is the motto now of the movement. Return loyal power. Okay. The idea was to launch a peaceful revolution by changing the structures of the people, of the political system from within. Once the people seized the government power, they would return this power to the king, who in return would appoint a special committee to write a new constitution. The group claimed that this method was also constitutional because they did not intend to dissolve the constitution. Okay, now look carefully, look closely. This idea said they want to make a so-called peaceful revolution by the people. Okay, this is not a violent revolution, not like the army coup. We're not going to make a coup, but we make a peaceful revolution. Okay, by changing the structure of the whole system, from within. Okay, that means the people take over, the government power. Okay, that means, kick out the government. Okay, and then the people then return this power to the king. Okay, instead that the government run by the people. No, they give power to the king. And the king, will appoint a committee to write a new constitution. Okay. So that's why they said this is better than army coup. We didn't make a coup. We didn't abolish the constitution. We simply, rewrite a new constitution. Okay. And using the constitutional mean, okay, work within the constitution. It's very, very clever. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Now we follow, this the PAD a little bit, on 4-5 February, 2006, they made a stage, okay, in front of Rajan Avenue, in front of Petenang Anand, okay, and using the Thai local wisdom, Phum Panya Thai, okay, to stage, that the ceremony. In the stage, in the middle, what the Buddha image, okay, seated on a set of prayers table, okay, Tok Mu Busha, okay, you have the Buddhist tables, okay, with a big Buddha image, okay, and next to the right of the Buddha image were the pictures of the king and queen, okay. On the left of the Buddha was an ancient bell taken from Vachana Songkham, okay, Rakhang, the bell, old, okay, bell from Vachana Songkham. And then they're gonna ring the bell, okay. Chana Songkham means you win the war, okay. And in front of the stage, there was a black image of Jatukham Ramathep. That time, there was a kind of a fashion, among believer of animistic believer, of the psychic things, Khương Rang, amulet, okay, because people discover the magic power of this Jatukham Ramathep, this the Hindu, god, from the Nakhon Si Thammarat, and very, very powerful, curated the miracle, results, to people, Anyway, so they bought this Jatukham Ramathep, to put in front of, the Buddhist, image, okay. And then there was a big banner, flying over the stage, written, "Mission to restore the nation for February 2549." Okay. To bring back the nation. Okay. Right. So finally, the PAD led mass protests for months, did not overthrow the Thaksin government. Who did it? It was the army. Okay. General Sonti Bunyarakarin, the army commander at that time, who appointed by Thaksin in September, 2006, he staged the coup d'etat against Thaksin in the evening, actually at night time, Okay. And there was a story, that the rumors, already, spread, before the coup, and during that time, Thaksin has the morning breakfast with the army commander and his, ministers, a few ministers, close him, come, like a weekly or I don't know, every day, not every day, I think, for breakfast, okay. When they sit down, and one morning, Thaksin asked General Sonti, who just probably appointed, newly appointed army commander, that would you make a coup against me? Of course, Sonti looked up quiet and said, "No, I will not." Okay. But months later, he did. Okay, so that's the story of the coup and the army commander. Don't trust any commanders. Okay. But before the coup, there was another thing, another development. This is during the protest by the PID. The king, stay at the Hoi Hin, Kai Kang Won Palace, away from worriness. Okay. In April 25th, the court justice of the Supreme Administrative Court Justice went to have audience with the king. Okay, wherever you appointed new or judges, they all have to seek the audience with the king. Okay, and the king, give speech to the Supreme Court judge that time. The king cleared up the increasing call for the monarchy to intervene in political conflict by saying that according to Article 7 of the 97 Constitution, which said that whenever no provision under this Constitution is applicable to any case, it shall be decided in accordance with the constitutional practice in the democratic regime of government with the king as head of the state. This is the Article 7 that simply said that if during crisis or during any problem facing the government, and the government cannot use any means, and the country also did not write how to solve, how to do, which way, it's left in the dark. So Article 7 said that, okay, use what we call, the practice of democratic regime with the king at head of the state. So if the government can use any means, without, disrupt, this tradition of our democratic, practice, then do it. So the PID and the group supporters, argue that, so according to Article 7, then we can ask the king to intervene. The king can ask the Thaksin government to resign, put it back, to keep them out from office, from the government. But the king tried to explain that, no, it doesn't mean that the king can do anything according to his wishes. So the king recommended that instead, the judiciary was the one who can resolve the conflict. Okay. So now, instead, the king said, not call me, okay, but you just call the court, the administrative court, okay, because the judges can solve the conflict. So after the administrative court went back to Bangkok, and then they ruled that general election on April 2nd was now devoid, okay, illegal, because the ballot boxes were open to the public, okay. And that's a snap election, because Thaksin tried to resolve the conflict, the demonstration. So he said, okay, then have a new election, okay. And Thaksin and his party, TRT, won the election again. So that's why the PID continued their protest against, okay. So it didn't work, So finally the court, found that the election, was not legal, okay. And then finally, dissolve the TRT Thai party, okay. So that's finished that government, So academic, name this the new role of the power of the court by checking the government power as the judicial revolution. Tulakan Piwat, okay, so it came from 2006, okay. All right, okay. And before the coup, General Prem also came, to criticize Thaksin government by comparing that the soldiers are horses and the government is a jockey, not the owner of the stable. Because at that time, I mean, the PAD, called the soldiers, the army to come and to stage the coup against the government. But there's another group of intellectuals and lecturers also said, no, because the soldier have to listen to the government. This is elected government. Soldier cannot, take your arm, take power into your hand against the elected government. And then Prem came out and said, no. By comparing with the horse and soldier, and the horse said that the government not the owner of the soldiers. Okay. It's the king who owns the soldiers. Okay. So when the coup came, it was understood among the middle class that the monarchy was finally united with the subjects once again. So that's why the coup group decided to call itself Council for Democratic Reform under Constitutional Monarchy, CDRM. But when the news broadcasted overseas and in English, it led to the understanding that the monarchy actually was involved in the coup. Why not? Because the coup group called itself that we're going to reform under the king. And the constitutional monarchy means the king. Monarchy run this constitution. So that's why people said, no, this is misunderstanding. The king isn't involved in this coup. Okay, so they changed into Council for Democratic Reform, CDR. Okay, no M, no monarchy. Okay, so that's was the coup in 2006. Okay. Now, next, we'll see another development of the people's movement. Now we turn to another group opposite the yellow shirt that were the red shirts. Okay. So after the coup 2006, then there was a new constitution of 2007. Okay, still following the old tradition of coup and election and constitution and election. Then came election in 2008. Of course, the so-called Thaksin party won again, and Mr. Somchai Wongsawat, his in-law, okay, became the prime minister less than a year. The yellow shirt came out to protest against Somchai government. Led to the confiscation of the Suvarnabhumi and Dornbirn airports. They seized the airports for a couple of days. That was the hectic situation in Bangkok, in Thailand. Almost like the COVID, occupied Bangkok. People cannot travel. No international flight coming in or going out from Suvarnabhumi and Dornbirn. That's very serious, yeah. Anyway, so finally, Somchai was kicked out by Constitutional Court. Okay, said that he guilty of mishandling the government, blah blah blah. And then the parliament chose Samak, who also came from Thaksin, to become the prime minister. Again, the protest against him continued. And the Constitutional Court found him guilty of corruption by doing his program, TV program, Kin Pai Bon Pai, accusing him of accepting money from the program, which is corruption, because you, as a prime minister, you cannot accept outside money. Okay, so this is going to be the same case that the Constitutional Court going to rule on Prayut Chan-o-cha December 2nd, whether he continued using his home in the army compound and receiving, you know, support from the army when he was prime minister. Whether is it legal or not, constitutional or not, okay, we're going to see. Okay, so the Palang Prachachon Party, the Thaksin Party, you know, also, you know, was, you know, dissolved, you know, by the Constitutional Court. So, so Democrat became the prime minister, became the party, government party, and Apise became prime minister. Now, the Red Shirt came to protest. The United Front for Democracy Against Dictatorship, UDD, okay, so in 2009, came to protest against, you know, Apise government, okay, so they want, you know, a new constitution like 1997. They want to abolish the 2007 constitution, okay, and blame that the government is now like a bureaucratic regime, okay, Amatya Tipatai, okay, to belong to the elite class, okay, and the protest became widespread, you know, over Bangkok, you know. Okay. So in Bangkok, you know, the red protesters occupied Victory Monument and confronting armed forces in some streets, leading to the use of lethal weapons by the soldiers. So gunshot, using guns, you know. At that time, they didn't use, you know, the water cannons or with the gas cannon. Okay, use the live, you know, bullet. Okay. The protesters resorted by burning public buses and burning tires in the streets. Okay. The Red Shirts then moved to protest in front of the government house and demanded the resignation of the Apise government. Some Bangkok residents, together with the media, were hostile and turned against the Red Shirts protesters, contributing to the decision of the government to use armed forces to round up the protesters in the area. Okay. And the most violent and disruptive, you know, protest was in Pattaya, because at that time in April 2009, Thailand was the host of ASEAN country meeting. Okay, so we have international head of states, you know, came to Pattaya hotels, you know, and the Red Shirt went, you know, to occupy the hotels, you know, and disrupt the meeting, you know. So they have to send out, you know, helicopters have to bring, carry, you know, the leaders of many countries, you know, including China and Japan, I think, you know, countries, you know, out from the hotels, you know, and put them in the plane, you know, to Bangkok, you know, and then leave. Okay, that was very bad, you know, violent catches, you know, in Pattaya, you know. Okay, but that, you know, struggle, you know, ended in the defeat of the UDD, you know, in April 2009. Finally, they gave in, you know, because they cannot fight the army. Okay. Okay, but okay, coming back again. Now we move to the next sections. We're talking about the ideas of the middle classes over democratic government. Now, how by the end of the Red Shirt, the one thing that I didn't mention, but we already look at the chronology, it was the heavy and violent suppression of the Red Shirts, UDD, in May 2010. That was very bad, you know, resulting in the death of 99 wretches, and 100,000 injured. Yeah. So that was very bad, demonstration protest by the wretches against the Democrat government, and being really suppressed by the army. Okay, yeah. Now next we look at the so-called moral righteousness above democracy. Okay, this is the called politics of the virtuous people, การเมืองของคนดี Okay, so this is another development by the so-called People's Democratic Reform Council, PDRC, led by Suthep Thakksuban, deputy leader of Democrat Party under Abhisit and his company, okay, friends and supporters. Okay, so the PDRC, start the protest because the Yingluck government, issued a law called amnesty. Okay, and supposed to amnesty almost every political prisoners way back to like a Thaksin period. Okay, so this the Suthep and Democrat Party, which was the opposition party at the time, start their campaign against and using the same thing, protest, and then came out to occupy Rajadrudan Avenue and change the name to PDRC. Okay, so similar to PAD and its conservative, loyalist political ideology and mistrust of liberalism, whose language paved the way for people's access to state power. Okay, now the PDRC, the different from the PAD in terms of their supporters, because this time, not only the middle class, but also the so-called upper class, what we call in Thai high soul. Okay, I mean high society people. Okay, they used to be called the silent majority, but this time they said, well, they are not silent anymore. They came out, give donations, give money, took the people, to protest. Yeah, okay, many company, many corporations, big, family in Bangkok, all came out, yeah. And they said, I'm not really for democracy because I don't think we're ready for it. We need a strong government like China's or Singapore's, almost like a dictatorship, but for the good of the country. This is one of the family of Ososapa, the big old family who run the pharmaceutical and all kind of drink, blah, 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 yeah. Okay. Even Kon Chatikawanit, Democrat MP from Bangkok, also announced on the stage, or wake up the stage, with Suthep, invoking Thomas Jefferson, saying that when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. Okay. The final proposal was the establishment of the People's Council with 400 members elected from various occupations nationwide and 100 members selected by the PDRC. The People's Council was to replace the Yingluck government. The project issue was how to replace Yingluck. Okay, so this is when the protest, draw 100,000 people, all over the country, not only Bangkok, but major cities, but mostly the provinces send the people into Bangkok, yeah, in trucks, in trains, in buses, they come, and stay in Bangkok for months. Okay, yeah. So how to replace, okay, Yingluck? The old way is using Article 7 of the Constitution, but that one is already, exhausted by PAD, So the PDRC advanced a new theory called people sovereignty. Okay, the theory of people sovereignty by declaring themselves as a sovereign on the basis of having support of 1 million people in the protest movement. The impressive march of over 1 million people on Rajadamnern Avenue on 24th November 2013 had transformed Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan, this is a book, classic book talking about sovereignty, into a reality in Thai soil. Okay, Suthep declared that the people had recalled power from the government, and he was the leader of the sovereign power now. Okay, so this is similar when the army commander made a coup, and the coup leader will after they abolish constitution and then put the new constitution, they will say, okay, they become sovereign power. Okay, now Suthep, without making a coup, but since you have the million people, huge numbers, then he said, okay, then I can recall that, okay, we took power from the government now. Yeah, it's in our hand. Okay, this is new theory of sovereign power. And this idea got support for many academics, including the famous Dr. Surin Pitsuwan, a former Minister of Foreign Affairs under Chuen Lik-pai government in 1990 to 1994, and he became former Secretary General of ASEAN in 2008 to 2011. And he said in his article published in the Bangkok Post, if the number of protesters was more than 1 million, this must be considered an expression of people's power. They saw no need to go to the loyal power. Instead, they could, in the name of the people, declaring the seizure of the sovereign power. It was the people's revolt. Okay, this one it is a lot easier than PAD. Okay, PAD still had to go back to the loyal power. Okay, but this time, they said no. We have close to 1 million people coming up, so it's already in our hand. The sovereign power, the highest power of the land, in the hand of the people. So it's almost like a people revolt, make a revolt, okay, without seizure the government power, okay. But when the protest going on, they all occupy, they seize the government, they didn't allow the government to work, okay. They lock up, okay, most ministry offices, not allow people to go into work, okay. So it's almost like taking over the government power, okay. Now, so who, is these people, They were good people, คนดี or good or virtuous people, okay. So the protesters proclaim themselves as good people, while the government as evil or safe institute to be destroyed, okay. People would create a new political culture from servile culture to become free culture, from evil political system to politics in which moral righteousness lead politics. So under these good people, they don't need the kind of equality, okay. But actually, they said in natural that people are not equal. Men are not equal, and the words of rural people were not equal with those of the urban, educated middle class. So you have many deans of university, famous universities, and high soul people, went up the stage, to speak up, on TV or on the satellite TV, every night saying that, we're not equal. The Chaban, rural people, could not have equal right with educated middle class, okay. That time, there was another group that disagree with the PDRC, They were the enlightened jurists, Niti Raj, okay. Enlightened jurists, law for the people, okay. This group consists of mostly Thammasat law professors, okay, Bolajet Pakirat and Piyabut Sangkanokul, who later become the Anakot Mai, founding the party. Okay, the enlightened jurists urged the government to amend the 112 article according to the modern practice and prevent it being exploited by self-styled nationalists and loyalists to intimidate and harass others who had different political opinions and ideas. So back then, they already saw that 112, a less majesty law, against criticism or any, mention about the monarchy, it's already been used to intimidate the other people, okay? So the enlightened jurists also want to make the coup makers accountable for wrongdoing, because the coup was unconstitutional and criminal, punishable by law of the land. Okay, we talked before, that every constitution, said that who abolished the constitution, face the death sentence, But the problem is no one, arrested and prosecute them. For the first time, the jurists, enlightened jurists, recommend that we should issue law, after the constitution, came out, they should, make a law, to punish backward for the coup makers, okay? And the group, together with other faculties, in lecturers in many universities, formed a group called Assembly for the Defense of Democracy, AFDD. Because by that time, there's so many groups, PDRC, they have many supporters of lecturers, academics, and civil society, and even labor union, So for the people who try to bring in democracy, back to principle, no other group can speak up for them, okay? Because the people are afraid to be labeled as Thaksin, supporters of Thaksin, people, But the AFDD, okay, so the point is that the FDD decided that it's time that people should come out to speak up, to defend democracy. Because the political party like Pheu Thai party could not defend themselves. They became the victims, okay? They became the bad guys in the media, in government places, and everywhere. People just think that they're corrupted. They want to issue the amnesty to help Thaksin back to Thailand. Okay, but by not speak up, you see, that the PDRC, advanced a theory, that never been practiced anywhere in the world. They just made up their own, sovereign power, by million people, So AFDD, and now it's public movement on December 10, 2013, which was the constitutional day, okay, during the heavy protesting going on, So the group decided to come out, and then make their statement, that the reason is, now the protest, went too far. It's not simply, check and try to balance the government, but actually they can overthrow the government now, okay? So, okay, but in the end, any attempt, to help, to try to bring back democracy, to principle, to the open election, and Yingluck tried to resign, and ask for dissolve the parliament, and dissolve the government, cabinet, and then call for election, But then, the election commission said, no, we cannot have election because too many protests going on, and the protesters blocked every voting, booth. So people could not go into vote, in the February 2nd, 2014, So situation turned very bad, So finally, May 22, Prayut and his gang, made a coup against Jinla government, okay, and called themselves the National Council for Peace and Order. The NICPO came into being, okay. So we can see that, again, the coup also, make morality, as the only effective power to fight against the so-called popular politics and political system based on elections and populist policy. Okay, so you listen to Prayut and the company, the first year, they just simply said that they come to bring reconciliation, peace, and order, and call for good people the game. Okay, so using morality, as the effective power, again going back to constitution, to election, to have the system work as normal. Okay, so new politics mean new constitution, and they want to reduce the executive power, that means the power of the government, elected government, and administration to a minimum. Okay, this is how the new constitution gonna write. And they're gonna have the Senate have power to screen government appointees and propose bills and even initiate law by itself. Okay. So the culmination of the moral discourse was completed by PAD, People Assembly for Democracy. Okay. All right. Next, I will give you my analysis of the last lecture. Okay. You can see clearly, two roads and visions of Thai society and politics. Okay. One is traditional, conservative, loyalist, and hierarchical order. This is the vision of society in the eyes of the conservative. Okay. On the other hand, another group, want a modern, progressive, people's-oriented, and more equal order in society. This will be the younger generation, new group, new people. Okay, and outside the circle of the elite, so not in a network monarchy. Okay, and then you see two methods of government and education. One using authoritarianism, limited democracy, or rely on bureaucratic polity, okay, run by government or by the government officials. Everything becomes bureaucratic, red tape and slow and has no meaning except, for the sake of the government. Okay. The other methods is what we call liberalism, full democracy, decentralized or self-government. This is down to the province, to the local tambon village, district, that we should decentralize the power from the central government so they can govern by themselves, they can solve their own problem. Okay. And then you can see two ideas and ideologies. One is monarchism. So this is the idea that they want to use monarchy, to active in politics. Okay, have the form of monarchy around, put in the democracy with monarchy as head of state, some kind of that, And then paternalism. This is from Sorit down to Prayut, the same thing, the government is the father. The prime minister is the one who knows everything, and decide everything, okay? And they're all conservative, okay? So they don't look for changes in international, except, borrow. You just allow the Western science technology in, and you just copy them, okay? Another idea is called libertarianism. I mean, more liberty. These are people who want liberty, more equality, more fraternity, and all, based on humanism. Okay, the love of human being. Okay, or people equal, and gender and ages, should not be the barriers, to make people unequal. Okay. All right, so that would be the analysis for this week. And some of these, you can go back to look from 1932 down to 2017. I think these two roads, with two vision, two method, two ideas, developed, and parallel, throughout, our 80 most years, of Thai society and democracy. Okay. All right, so the last thing, for this week, reading two pieces. One is my, interview, the anti-Thaksin movement in Thailand, an interview published by Academia Seneca in Taiwan, 2006. I will give you the PDF in line, okay? And Thongchai Vinechakun, Toppling Democracy in Journal Contemporary Age. I think this one already sent somewhere in your blackboard, you check it out, yeah. Okay, so that will be, my lecture for this week, and is the last week. So next will be the take-home exam, which we will post in, I think, blackboard, I guess. Okay. All right. So wish you good luck, and have a best grade and successful in your exam, in your education. Okay. Goodbye.